Welcome back to Introduction to Engineering Design. Today we're going to talk about SolidWorks. This is an introductory video to get you oriented on some of the menus and options using SolidWorks. First, how do you start SolidWorks? Well, the icon to start SolidWorks is underneath my cursor now. It's the SolidWorks 2018 icon. Notice there's another one that looks very similar to it, SolidWorks Electric. Don't use the SolidWorks Electric in our class. So that is not the icon we want. So let's start it up by double-clicking with your left mouse button on the SolidWorks 2018 icon. A small splash screen will start up, and it will take somewhere between 30 seconds and 45 seconds to get the program up and running. Now, as you remember, in our last video, we talked about a file structure that's set up for the course, and in one of those files is an options file that will set up all of your menus and displays. So let's talk about how we use that file. So what we're going to do first is, before we start anything on SolidWorks, is I'm going to go ahead and click on this little gear icon, Options. I'm going to click the drop down and use Save Restore Options. When we do that, we get a wizard that opens up, and I want to select Restore Settings. So I click once on the button. You'll notice it looks like it is pressed, and now choose Next. This will allow me to navigate to that folder on the C drive, Westwood Engineering, ~, and then Mr. Saxon IED. You can either click it once and go open, or just double click. Now you'll click Next and Finish. This will set your default displays and file locations to be compatible with all the templates used in our class. Well, that's awesome. So the very first thing I want to talk about here is the SolidWorks interfaces that you'll see up on my screen. Now, as you come up and bring your cursor up and in the left-hand side, you'll notice that the SolidWorks icon expands out into a drop-down menu. I'm going to drop that pin. You should generally leave that pinned throughout class. It will be much easier. So right now we are up here in the drop-down menu area, and this is where we can open up a file. Now there's several different ways that we can open a file. I can choose File, New or Open, or I could come over here and start a new file or open a file. Two most common ways that we can do this. I can look at recent documents and recent folders, and I can do the same thing over here, recent documents and recent folders. So you see they're very much a repeat. For now, let's go ahead and just click on the New icon. This brings up a menu. You'll probably see this menu, and you'll probably want to remember what these icons look like. This is the icon for a part, both in the folder structure and in the New menu. An assembly is multiple parts or multiple assemblies conjoined together using constraints and mates, and then a drawing is a paper product showing different views of an assembly or a part. So let's go ahead and select Part. If you have this view, you've selected the Advanced tab. Now in here you're going to see some different templates that we use. This one in particular is set up for our class itself. So these are the Westwood Engineering templates. So let's go ahead and go Novice and Part, then go OK. SolidWorks will open up a modeling space for us, and we'll go through what the components are within that model space. So let's start up here at the top, which we already talked about. This upper portion, this top menu bar, is the drop-down, where all the drop-down menus reside. Now, we talked about what the Options button does. This Options button, if I select the gear, will allow me to change many different options within SolidWorks. Now, typically you won't have to do that in class because we've set these. But one that we will change quite frequently will be our units. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But I do want to point something out that's really neat up here in the corner. And this is the search function. Now up here I can search multiple different things. I can search commands, help, I can look for different files, and I can go to an online service called My SolidWorks. But mostly it's good for commands. So if you don't remember how to do something, as an example, let's say sketch, I just start typing it, and now I see the sketch icon show up. It tells me, gives me a little pop-up and tells me what it does, but if you click on the eyeball, it actually will put the cursor over and highlight with the red arrow where you have to click to make that happen. So really neat. So we'll do that one more time. Sketch. And click on the eyeball. And there's the red arrow. So very useful. That's what that menu does. If I also just hit the S, if I just hit the S, what that will also do is put my cursor up into the search command. So very useful functions for finding things. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on over here in the right-hand side here. On the right-hand side here, this entire area is what we refer to as the Feature Manager design tree. Sometimes you'll hear me talk about it as the tree. This tells you a history of how the part was made. In addition, it tells you the part features, and we'll talk about that some more in some later videos. But this is the Feature Manager design tree. In the middle here, we have a floating toolbar. The floating toolbar itself will control some of the displays, and we'll go through all of that with a sample part. And the right-hand side, right over here, we have a task panel. So we will look very briefly at that, but most of it we'll use the task panel when we get later on into doing drawings. And down in the bottom, this is where we have our units for our document. Now we can access those units both in the settings, under options, and then we can come down and alter our units within the document. All sorts of different things here, and you can make many different changes here, but usually we'll just come down here and I will change this to mmgs. That's millimeters, grams, and seconds, and then back to inch, pound, seconds. So I can select some different options. I can also go here and edit my document units, and you will notice that this tells me how many decimals I'm using within this document. So there I'm at 4 decimals for length in it. I'll go back to 3, and then click on OK. So that's the basic introduction to the menu for SolidWorks.